And I think the future is definitely bright in terms of the overall product and the fan sport. In terms of the national media, I know you alluded to that as well. I think you're starting to see the W just, it's going more mainstream. Like if you turn on ESPN and you're watching First Take, it's not out of the question to see Stephen A, talking about something to do with the W in terms of on the floor, an on the floor product. And I would say even 7 to 10 years ago, that would have never happened unless something really drastic happened in the league. Now it's not out of the question whatsoever. You're seeing more and more games, broadcasted not only on ESPN but also on ABC. You're seeing the Ion games continue to pop up. Like it's becoming easier to watch every team, not just your local team. And again, I think that's a good thing overall.
Let's jump into the Phoenix Mercury. Finished 7th in the league with a record of 19-21 last year. Ended to back-to-back losses to Minnesota in the first round of WNBA playoffs. What was just doing your research preparation for this season? Like, how are you feeling yourself in terms of how well the team performed last season? It might be an unfair question because the roster is totally different, but still, just in terms of coaching, just the feel of the organization, what was the overall vibe of last season, you think?
Yeah, I think last year, and again, I wasn't around, but like you said, I've done enough research on it now, and I watched quite a few of the games last year, and also just talking to people around the organization now heading into this season. It was an interesting blend of, the old guard in terms of the DT and the BGs of the world, but also then you had the new coaching staff with Coach Tibbetts coming in last year. So it was an adjustment with the new coaching staff while also still having your franchise players, of course. Kalia had a great year for the Merc last year as well, but they also battled injuries. So there were a ton of moving pieces, and I think considering they still made the playoffs, that is. That was a solid year in that sense. Obviously, this is a franchise that prides themselves on not only making the playoffs, but winning championships and competing deep into the playoffs. So, it wasn't quite the most successful year overall, but I think, in terms of the hands they were dealt with, the injury bugs that they had to deal with and things of that nature as well, I think that the foundation was set. Now, like you said, it's a brand new core now heading into this year. But the one thing that does remain, well, there are 3 players coming back, but the coaching staff is a big one. And that system, positionless basketball, which is kind of spread all over the game at every level. But that's the goal of this squad this year is playing up-tempo, positionless basketball with a couple of new twists. But to have a year under your belt, and that's something that I've already heard from Coach just talking to him privately during training camp, is how much more comfortable he is personally and all of his assistants. Like last year at this time, a bunch of the assistant coaches that had just gotten the jobs, they didn't have a place to live in Phoenix yet.
Wow.
It was very much not only on the court learning the franchise and the organization and this level of basketball in some cases, but also learning the community, figuring out where you're going to live, where you like to eat, things that we don't think about at times in sports. But all of those things obviously add up and are quote unquote distractions, if you will. So I think that is something that I take away from last year and just talking to people was that it was an adjustment for the new coaching staff. But I think all in all, you look at Kalia in the year that she had and how she can now take that into year number 2 or another year with the Merc, I should say, and then obviously having the farewell to Diana, and then without us knowing at the time to BG as well. It was definitely a year that I think fans will remember for a long time, just because that's the end of that long era with those 2, absolute stars. But I think now looking into 2025, there's a lot of excitement in terms of the new era, if you will.
So let's discuss the departures of Brittney Griner and Diana Taurasi. Diana Taurasi first. She had her farewell tour. What is going to be her relationship with the organization moving forward? Has that been determined? Like, we've seen kind of different iterations of just former players and the relationships with kind of the team they've had the most tenure yet with, whether it be in a broadcasting role, in a basketball role, coaching, ownership, etc. Where do you think it's going to be her role, or do you think she's just going to be kind of taking a break and it's kind of relaxing until she kind of just figure out her next move, you think?
Yeah, see, we haven't discussed anything, at least at my level, in terms of that next role. It is rather fresh still, just a couple of months now. But I can tell you that I can say confidently that she's welcome back in whatever role she wants. The practice floor at the brand new Mountain America Performance Center, which is a beautiful facility, just a couple of blocks away from the arena. It's Diana Taurasi Court, has her logo on it, so that's right there. Obviously, she's the greatest player in franchise history, if not in the W's history, or right up there. She's on the Mount Rushmore. I think we'd all agree, at very least. But yeah, she's welcome back. I have no inside scoop for you on that front. Obviously, I have a great partner in Annie Myers-Drysdale, but I'm sure if DT ever wanted to broadcast as well, we'd find a way to make it a 3-man booth, or get her involved on the action however she wanted to. But I don't have any inside scoop on that, but she's welcome back at any point whenever she wants to be. I can say that confidently. And every day when you walk into the practice facility, you see Diana Taurasi Court, and we've had some of the rookies in camp talk about just how cool that is for them. And to be able to play on a court that Diana played on, or not necessarily that court, but play for a franchise that DT played for and starred for, and it's a really cool full circle moment for, I think, so many players on this year's team as well.
What was the relationship between the fans and Diana Taurasi compared to other, known players? San Antonio, we see, Manu and Tim Duncan still involved. They walked out with Popovich the other day with his announcement. What is kind of her relationship to the organization? Like, how much can you kind of put into words? Like, how much does she mean? Like, casual fans, they see clips, they see the farewell tour, but I don't think they really see the connection between these players who spend a long time with their teams and the organization. Can you kind of put that in context?
She is Mercury basketball. I think that's the easiest way to put it. I think if you were to ask, a random person walking down the street in this area, what is the Phoenix Mercury? Who are the Phoenix Mercury? Whatever, however you want to phrase it. I think, if it's someone who doesn't follow the W, and luckily we're getting more and more people that do follow the W now, but if it's someone who doesn't follow the W, they're going to know who Diana Taurasi is. That's an absolute given. I think that says a lot, and the impact you can make not only with fans of your franchise, and certainly everyone that's a Mercury fan loves DT and will die for DT. And is that kind of a relationship. It's very, very tight, but I think it also reflects on her impact on the franchise and the community as a whole in terms of what she's done for women's basketball, by how maybe a casual who isn't locked into the W and might not be able to name a couple of players on the roster now that she's gone, but they know who she is, and they know that she was a winner. They know she had that mama mentality. And I think also a cool part about Diana, not really to do with the fans, but the respect she had and the relationships she had with media members that were consistently out covering the Merc as well. I have a couple of buddies who aren't broadcasters, but they were on the beat, regularly cover the Mercury over the last few years, and it was cool to hear some of the behind-the-scenes stories of how DT would notice you when you put in the hours and you were there, and she would also appreciate those who clearly had done their research and ask questions that aren't just cookie-cutter questions. And I think both of us can realize what a quote-unquote cookie-cutter question is. But when you put in the time and you did your research and you did your job as a journalist, DT would appreciate that. And she would maybe not call you out in a press conference, but I just know from behind the scenes a few times that she would make it known to that specific media member, hey, I appreciate what you're doing. It's noticed what you're doing, and I think for someone at her level, for any professional athlete, but especially someone at her level, to take the time to kind of give props, if you will, for a media member, I think that was really cool. But yeah, overall, she's certainly on, a very short list of Arizona sports icons. And like I said earlier, she's on the Mount Rushmore of all-time greats, at minimum, Mount Rushmore of all-time greats in the league's history as well.
So the Mercury, they also lost Brittney Griner. Kind of came as a shock. What was kind of your reactions to that, and how has the team adjusted? We'll get to on the court, but about off the court as well. Another prominent member of that organization. Just curious, kind of your feelings when that all went down with her moving on.
Yeah, I think, like you said, it was a surprise I was still on the outside of the organization at that time, so I took it as a major surprise. I didn't know much going on behind the scenes, and obviously I'm not saying bad things were happening behind the scenes, but yeah, it was a surprise. It was as big of a surprise to me as it was to probably you or others that follow the franchise, and I think that it's another one of those things where, okay, it's now a complete new era. And I think the term new era gets thrown around a lot in sports, whether it's just a new coach or a new GM or maybe a big trade. I think right now in the sport of basketball, it's a new era for the Los Angeles Lakers, the Dallas Mavericks, and the Phoenix Mercury. And I think those three franchises, like, actually, I'm not even gonna throw the Lakers because they still have LeBron. So I'll go Mavericks, I'll go Mercury, in terms of where it is completely a new vibe. And I think in the Mercs case this year, not to say that last year wasn't a good vibe at all. I'm not insinuating that at all. But I do think there's kind of a fresh vibe, if you will, that I've noticed so far. Obviously, BG, another one of those franchise players, and I would say along with DT, a casual fan also knows who Brittney Griner is. And what she brought to this franchise and the impact she had not only on the court but off the court as well. I'm actually lucky enough. I'll be on the call for her first game back in Phoenix, which will be massive. I would say maybe outside of the Fever coming into town, probably the biggest home game of the year, and hopefully to give BG the love she deserves. Hopefully as big as when Indiana comes to town. But it will be awesome to see her back here. I know that this franchise also holds her in an extremely high regard and deservingly so. But yeah, it is a new era all around for the Mercury to move on from two of the franchise's all-time greats.
Yeah, let's talk about that new era, and I want to get to how the fan base is feeling. But first, on the court, with Nate Tibbetts, just his overall philosophy of positionless basketball, and with this new roster, what are you looking for in terms of like the first half of the season of how this team is going to gel together? Not necessarily about wins, but in terms of how this team is coming together, progressing in terms of kind of the overall goal of eventually winning a championship, but there's baby steps there. It doesn't happen overnight. So kind of what are you looking forward to the first half of the season for this team to see that they're meeting your expectations heading into the All-Star break, you think?
Justin, I assume you probably follow college basketball as well, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so we're in a day and age now in college basketball where more times than not, unfortunately, with the transfer portal, you basically start the year with a brand new team.
Yes.
You don't often see that in pro sports. It kind of has that feel of you just picked up a bunch of new freshmen and transfers from the portal because, like I said earlier, there are 3 returners on the roster, which is unbelievable. So I think early on in the roster, and of course with such a short build up to the regular season and the W, like I think it's fair to say there probably will be some I don't want to say growing pains, but there are going to be, like you said, some times where you need to adjust to the style, not only of play that coach likes to go with, but also just to know where your teammates are going to be and where someone likes their pass and all those different things that you only learn through playing. With only 2 preseason games and about a week and a half of camp before the regular season starts, it's impossible to learn all of that in that short of a time span. So I think early on, it's going to be heavily relying on the stars. And luckily, this team does have 3 great stars. Alyssa Thomas, Satou, and then obviously Kalia, who we mentioned a couple of times, are proven winners at this level, proven forces and what they're great with. Obviously, AT, one of the great defenders in this league for years now. You have Satou, who's someone who can really do it in every way on the floor, and then obviously with Ka, she's a winner. Like that's point blank, unrivaled, and obviously with the Olympics and the Finals MVP back in 2021. So I think that you have to lean on those 3 stars. Obviously, you want it to be a more well-rounded team than just those 3, but I think early on you're going to have to rely on those 3 to be great, and obviously that'll be an all-year thing where they all have to be great. That's the way this team is built. But I think early on when everyone is kind of getting to know each other, if you will, on the floor, I think it's one of those moments where you're going to have to lean on those proven vets and those proven stars in this league to help you kind of carry you through the first few games, first couple weeks, if you will, of the season.
How does the fan base feel about this new roster, so to speak? Is there excitement? Is there kind of still grieving over the losses of just Taurasi and Griner, or are they fully moved on, or fully on board with what this team can do this season?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think you just forget about
Sure.
Booty and Brittney. So I'm sure, like I alluded to, when Atlanta does come to town, it will be an interesting environment. Obviously, it's different with DT because she retired. But it's hard to say because this team hasn't played in front of a crowd yet.
Sure.
Played in Vegas in the first preseason game. They'll have their first preseason game at home on Sunday, this upcoming Sunday. So I guess we might get a little bit of a feel then. I will say, though, this is a ride or die fan base. The X factor is again, I'm biased, but seems like one of the better franchises in terms of fan support over the course of the entire franchise history, one of the original franchises dating back to 97. So I have no doubt the fan base will support this team. I also think if this team is able to play to their potential in terms of what we see on paper, which is, of course, a whole nother topic, they have the potential to be really exciting to watch. I know we just alluded to, the big three, which I would say is a really deadly combination of three players who have the potential to really play off of each other well. And we've seen that early on in training camp. And I know it's just training camp, so everyone looks great in training camp. But I think that has potential to be very exciting. And then also, who doesn't love fast-paced, high-flying offense? I think I alluded to Steve Nash earlier on. This city loves that, and they still remember those times with Mike D'Antoni. It's exactly what Phoenix basketball has kind of been known for, and especially with that generation of fans over the last 20 years or so. Wild, it's been around 20 years, but anyways. So I think that's a fun and exciting brand of basketball that can be really relatable to this area. Not to mention the fan base is already so loyal to begin with. And then you have that star power and some new faces to kind of fall in love with throughout the course of the season. I think the fan base is pumped up to get it going and to get to know this new squad.
Can you discuss just the fan base in the Phoenix and just in the Arizona area, just in terms of the relationship with basketball? I always love delving into just how different fans in different states interact with the game. Is there anything you think that's unique, just either with the fans' relationship with the Mercury or the Suns or Arizona State or any other kind of basketball things going on there that you think is very signature to just how Arizona fans interact with the game of basketball, or do you think it's kind of a typical fan base? Is there kind of anything that strikes to you that's unique compared to other fan bases?
Yeah, it's certainly unique in that. So obviously Phoenix is a booming city, and it continues to grow and grow and grow. I think it's just outside the top 5 now in population in the U.S. I think it's number 6. You'd have to fact check me on that, but it's right there towards the top 5 in the country in population. It hasn't always been that way, and so now we look around. We've got the Arizona Cardinals, you've got the Diamondbacks, obviously the Suns and the Merc, you've got ASU in the market. You had the Arizona Coyotes hockey until a year ago, so you had every single pro sport in the Valley essentially outside of the MLS. But back in the day, the Suns were the first team. They were the first pro team to come. So there's a really special bond with the Suns in this market because they were the first. And when the Suns are rolling, like even a couple of years ago, there's nothing that compares to it. And obviously I can't attest to this because I'm not old enough, but I've had plenty of people tell me that if all the teams in the market are rolling well, and we'd love for that to happen, if all the teams are rolling well, it's still a Suns town.
Wow.
So I think that is unique, and I think it's that relationship of it being a original franchise. And you can say the exact same thing about the Merc, because the day the league started, the Phoenix Mercury were a franchise. And I think that's unique as well. There's been that connection over time since 97. where they've been able to cultivate a fan base. They've been able to build up. Obviously, they've had the success of winning titles and having someone like DT to kind of carry that weight and to introduce to a younger generation how great the W can be and how impactful it can be. So I think it's a little bit different where the Suns have been around longer, but the Merc have now been here for long enough as well to where they've built up that strong fan base to where players might change, the league's look might change overall, your rivals might change, but every single summer or every single winter in the case of the Suns that you're going to have basketball. And I think that's the greatest thing. Like, that's the tradition we love about sports, is that outside of the franchise, as a fan, your life is going to look different 10 years now than it looks right now. And I know I'm getting deep, but you can rely on the fact that you're going to have your teams. Whether they're good, bad, or indifferent, you're going to have your teams to root on. And I think that's what makes specifically this as a basketball market really special, because you do have that long running consistency. And then I guess the last point would be, and this is pretty unique, I would say as well. I'm sure there are other markets that can kind of compare to this, but on a college level, this state is split, right? You've got Arizona and you've got Arizona State. But regardless of if you're an Arizona State or an Arizona fan, you are a Suns fan or you are a Mercury fan. So it is the uniter on the hardwood too, as well, I would say. Even more so than the Cardinals, because they came in a little bit later on the football side. You have more diversity, if you will, in terms of favorite teams in the state in football than I would say in basketball. You have a pretty consistent, hardcore fan base for both the Suns and the Merc. If you're from the state of Arizona, they're your team.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. I want to talk about the WNBA as a whole. Kind of what is anything that is going to get you excited about this season, non-Mercury related?
Sure.
And probably, I would say, non-Caitlin Clark related either. Is there anything else that's getting you excited about this season? We have the Golden State Valkyries that are new, a lot of new rosters, still some great draft picks from this previous draft class. Kind of anything else that maybe people are sleeping on that they should be really watching out for this upcoming season?
Yeah, we'll go without Caitlin as well. I like that because I think that's like a standard given answer at this point. I'm very curious to see who, if any team, if it's the Merc, great, but who can step up and maybe surprise people. Not that people are completely overlooking the Merc. Obviously, the star power is there, but people aren't sure because it's a brand new team. So who is going to take that leap, I guess, is what I'm excited for. Obviously, we've seen New York take that leap over the last several years. We saw Vegas, obviously, have their great run, and they are both still very dangerous teams. But can there be someone or a team in general that can kind of catch the league by surprise, if you will? It's really competitive now, so that's tough to do. It is tough to win games in this league. I'm excited to see that. You mentioned the Valkyries. I'm also excited to kind of see how their fan base specifically, not necessarily the product on the floor in year one, that's a tough ask, but their fan base, I think it's a great market for the W. I think it can really succeed, and especially with the ownership they have there over the next few years, I think that's a franchise to really keep an eye on. I'm excited to see how they kind of settle in, and then I'm excited to see LA. I'm excited to see the Sparks because they've got some star power now. I'm excited to see Kelsey settle in there. I think that's Brink coming back from injury. I think that's a fun team to keep an eye on. Yeah, they're getting talked about, but I think if they're healthy and they're rolling, they could be one of the more exciting teams to watch. So I'm actually going to amend everything I just said there. Give me LA. That's the storyline I'm excited to follow. Of course, City of Stars. Why not? But I'm going with the Sparks because I think they have potential to be really exciting. I don't know if they can win a championship, but I think they can be a really fun team to watch.
What do you think about just the future of the league? There is some with the CBA coming up. That's going to be a point of contention. Also, you have a lot of expansion teams. What is your feel of this league? A lot of just different opinions in terms of some people really being bullish in terms of really this league taking off, especially with all the expansion teams. Others having tempered expectations in terms of how the league has grown. What is your opinion in terms of where you see the potential of this league within the next 5 years. Kind of what's your feeling in terms of the kind of political climate and everything else? And I think what this league has going for it is that it actually thrived during one of the most challenging times and probably in the history of the world with the pandemic. It really showed signs of growth, so it really showed its resilience despite everything else going externally. Just kind of your opinions on where you see this league heading into the future, and kind of anything you see in terms of national media coverage, anything else you see where the WNBA should be able to capitalize on its continued momentum.
It's a great question. Honestly, to me, I feel as though I'm glad you brought up COVID. I think since that point, and especially now with some of the young stars in this league, I would liken the league right now to being a bowling ball rolling downhill. That doesn't mean they're going to they'll run into some obstacles in the way. You mentioned the CBA. Who knows about that? Obviously, there are other things going on just in the world in general that could serve as a little bit of a block, if you will. But I still think the momentum overall of that bowling ball is going to continue to roll and is going to continue to grow and is going to continue to go faster and faster. I just think right now we're at a point where the coolest part to me is that the young generation is now in. And when you hook the young generation, you've got it made. I mean, if you think about what other sports are trying to do around the country, professional sports, you're trying to get that young demographic. Yeah. I think the W has the advantage of having that young demographic right now. And I don't think that goes anywhere, because the advantage the league also has right now is, I know we already talked about Caitlin, but the biggest name in the league is also in her second year. So there's going to be so much to come with. And then you have young stars like Paige coming in. You've got Juju, hopefully she gets mended up and she's able to play in a couple of years. Like, you've got star power waiting in the wings, or starting off as a rookie as well. And then you've got established stars. You've got Asia, who just had her shoe released yesterday and they sold out in like 15 minutes. So not only do you now have the appeal of the W as a league, but you also have those individual stars. And I think nowadays in sports, you need to have the individual stars that you can market to where, how many times did we hear 10 years ago, 15 years ago, oh, I'm not a Cavs fan, I'm a LeBron fan. Yeah. That same thing is probably going to start happening with Caitlin, or with Juju, or with Paige, whoever it may be. And while that might annoy some of the old heads or the traditionalists, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because you're still a fan of the league at the end of the day. And I think if you're a fan of the league, that's a good thing, bottom line. Yeah. End of story. I think there are obviously great growth areas as well in terms of finally having chartered flights and getting to the level where the W needed to be on par with other professional sports, and deservingly so. There are still plenty of areas that need to be improved on. No question about that. But I do think that the momentum is starting to move in the right way, certainly. And I think the future is definitely bright in terms of the overall product and the fan sport. In terms of the national media, I know you alluded to that as well. I think you're starting to see the W it's going more mainstream. Like, if you turn on ESPN and you're watching First Take, it's not out of the question to see Stephen A., talking about something to do with the W in terms of on the floor, an on the floor product. And I would say even 7 to 10 years ago, that would have never happened, unless something really drastic happened in the league. Now it's not out of the question whatsoever. You're seeing more and more games, broadcasted not only on ESPN but also on ABC. You're seeing the Ion games continue to pop up. Like, it's becoming easier to watch every team, not just your local team. And again, I think that's a good thing overall.
Yeah, completely agree. Braiden, thank you very much for joining the show. Truly appreciate it. Can you let our audience know where they can find you on social media? You have any other upcoming projects not Mercury related, and then where they can catch you this season on Mercury games?
Yeah, man. So social media wise, I still call it Twitter, but X, whatever we want to call it, at Braiden, Braiden Bell, PXP. That's my Twitter, so you can follow me there. In terms of other projects, I'm busy. I always joke I have like 4 jobs. I do the G League for the Suns. I know I alluded to that. And then I do plenty of different sports at Arizona State here in the Valley. So Got a few more baseball series I'll be calling before I get going with the Merc. We were talking before we started recording. I actually don't do a Merc game until a few weeks into the regular season. I'm splitting the role with Ann Schatz, who's awesome. So she'll be doing a great job starting off the year for the Merc. But yeah, and then obviously once the season starts, locally here, fans can catch us on 3TV, Arizona's Family Sports, most of the games. Then obviously, if you're out of market, use League Pass, baby. Tune us up. We'll have a fun time. I get to work with Annie Myers-Drysdale, which to work with a Hall of Famer is an honor, and we're going to have a lot of fun. I can already tell that the dynamic of the broadcast will be fun, and like I said, I think the team will be very entertaining to watch as well.
Awesome. Braiden, thanks for the time. Let's appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.